How will you measure success? It's one of the most common questions a client can ask, and it's also one of my favorites until the follow up question shows up. Now, on today's show, I'm going to talk about how training success is often measured the wrong way and why looking only at short term results can be misleading. I'll share a Shark Tank moment for a real world example from my own career and what you should be measuring if you actually care about long term improvement. And you should. Ready? Let's go.
The Presentation Whisperer. Real-world tips, expert insights, and proven strategies to make every presentation unforgettable. Now, here's your host, professional speaker, and best-selling author, Rob Jolles.
Would you like to know one of the most common questions sales trainers hear? How are you going to measure the success of your program? Now, companies make significant investments in the training of their sales forces, and it certainly makes sense that they'd like to hear a method to evaluate the success of the program that they're going to be purchasing. It really is a great question. There's often another question that follows. What percent increase in sales can we expect after going through this training? It sure seems like a fair question, doesn't it? On second thought, it may not be quite as fair a question as you would think. One of my favorite television shows is a show called Shark Tank. If you've ever seen it, and I'm sure you have, you like it. Put it on your list if you haven't seen it. But when you see it, look for the episode, if you can find it, where there's a sales trainer that comes into Shark Tank and tries to sell his sales training. It's a must-see TV. One of the wealthy investors asked the sales trainer that exact question about the percent of increase in sales numbers, and the sales trainer had a rather simple answer. 40%. Sounds like a very impressive response. But the next question should have been, how did you arrive at that number? For a panel of supposed experts, I think it might have been a good question considering the following. The sales trainer has been in business for 4 months. The sales trainer had a grand total of 2 clients. The sales trainer never really disclosed any current clients and never specified what industry he was working with. In other words, the question was weak and the answer was a fairy tale. If I had a nickel for every client who asked me what percent increase they could expect and how the numbers would change from my training, I'd have a heck of a lot of nickels. It's easy to throw numbers out, but it's much harder to validate them. For instance, while I was at Xerox, I was part of a team of instructors that taught the fundamentals of selling to the salespeople at Xerox authorized dealerships. We took measurements and we found out that we were increasing sales from those who attended by 22%. Wow. And that was documented over a year. Of course, we failed to mention that over 90% of those who attended the program were new hires. Coincidentally, whether trained or not, new hires will typically sell and show an increase in sales numbers by simply staying employed and learning as they go. In the 90s, I was apparently a sales genius. Over 80% of my clients were in the financial industry, and due to the success of the stock market, sales numbers were going through the roof. People were practically taking numbers in the lobby to meet with a broker and invest their money. My sales training was obviously working like a charm since all of my trainees were seeing massive growth in their businesses. Now, we can look at the following question and see the complexity in it. What percent increase in sales, it doesn't have to be sales, in the training you're going to provide, can we expect after going through this training? I think the correct answer is this. That's going to depend on the economy, the implementation of the process driven within the organization, your particular product or position, and a number of other variables. However, I can tell you this, when you put a repeatable, predictable process in place that creates trust and urgency in my situation, or that create success in you for perhaps for what you're doing, you maximize every opportunity you face. I applaud an organization's desire to seek a measurement as to the success of training they're investing in. However, given the nature of training, the immediate percentage of gain really is difficult to measure. It's a lot like taking a golf lesson and measuring your initial success by how far you hit the ball. It's tempting, but it can be misleading. I much rather evaluate if the overall swing is improved, and not necessarily the distance the ball's traveling right out of the gate. The distance will come. Assuming the program put in place is of value, shouldn't the ultimate measurement be centered on who's actually using whatever has been taught? You'd think that the most rewarding aspects of my job would be nailing a presentation in front of a big audience, wiping the sweat away, and hearing the applause, and you'd be close. It's an amazing feeling. However, it takes a back seat to the sheer joy of working with a person who is struggling, holding management at bay with a promise that this individual will improve based on the new skills they're working to perfect, and watching that person soar past the others. This week, I heard from a salesperson I'd worked with who did just that. It was a very good week.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please follow, rate, and review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. For more resources and to connect with Rob, visit thepresentationwhisperer.com.